everyone, we are at the finish line. They're waving the checkered flag. 6 more days until the national championship is played between Notre Dame versus Ohio State. You know, the thing I hate the most about college football is when the season ends, because then we have a grueling long 7 months without it. I mean, the only way I can get my football fix in is by playing EA Sports College Football 25. I don't know if y'all play it, but let me tell y'all something. That game is like crack to me. I'm just addicted to playing that game to the point where I kind of have to put some restrictions on how much I play it, because there's times when I pick up that doggone Xbox One controller, I get on that game and I'm playing there for like 3-4 days straight. I don't want to do anything else but play that. But welcome back to another episode of the JT Sports Podcast. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in wherever you're watching. I'm your host, JT. Make sure that you smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon so you don't miss when we drop new content and when we go live. We have a fantastic episode on tap for tonight. Of course, we're going to break down and give our predictions for the upcoming national championship game. Right now, the line has moved down to Ohio State -7.5. Look, I hopped on this thing when Ohio State was a 9.5 point favorite, and it seems like by the day, Notre Dame, in the eyes of Vegas, seems to have a shot at keeping this thing close. Colorado fans are on edge right now for a good reason, because recently the Dallas Cowboys head coaching job opened up and Jerry Jones, their owner, gave Deion a phone call, and he might be on the move to the NFL despite denying having any interest coaching at that level. We're going to dive into his future at Colorado. Is he going to dip from Boulder? Oregon has some unethical practices that they are using in the portal. They have been accused of tampering with players, pretty much stealing players. They just stole the offensive lineman from USC. And Dabo Swinney ain't playing around no more, people. Dabo Swinney is doing things that I never thought he ever would have done. He's using the portal with that God's name, image, and likeness money, and he's firing coaches. He's poaching coaches from other playoff teams. They recently just hired defensive coordinator Tom Allen. And then we're going to jump around college football, discussing Alabama's future under Kalen DeBoer, Oklahoma's new quarterback transfer, and the DJ Lagway hype. Make sure that you check us out wherever you get your podcast from. Apple, Spotify, Amazon. The links are down in the description down below. If you enjoy, give us a 5-star review. We greatly appreciate it. Giving us a 5-star review is the equivalent to donating $1,000 to the channel. Greatly helps us out a lot. And man, let's dive into it. So it's finally here, people. In 6 days, a national champion is going to get crowned. One of these coaches is going to get their first national title under their belt. Either Marcus Freeman or Ryan Day, who's going to be able to come out on top. You got a Notre Dame team that, let's just be honest, man, when they lost to Northern Illinois, all of us, including Fighting Irish fans, counted this team out. Nobody would have thought they would have made it to this game. And you got an Ohio State team that invested $20 million into this squad. They were expected to be in this game. This isn't a surprise. And you have your typical David versus Goliath matchup, where you have Goliath, that being Ohio State, that has pretty much the most talented roster in college football. They're stacked at every single position. Meanwhile, you have a Notre Dame team that's hoping to get a big enough rock that they can throw at Goliath to knock him off and shock the entire world. And let me tell you guys something. Notre Dame has to set the tone early in this game, because the way Ohio State has came out in these last couple of playoff games, they're scoring on no opening possession. I mean, they're opening up a can of whoop ass the first 15 minutes. They're already calling ball game. Notre Dame with them being the underdog, with them being at the talent disadvantage, they got to come out hot. They got to come out and show Ohio State that you're not about to treat us like we're TCU from a few years ago when we was in the Natty. We deserve to be here. We're just as good as what you are, and we're about to show you. We're about to come out here with a high level of intensity, a high level of urgency, and we're about to show you that we are just as good as what you are. The games are played on the field, not on paper, for a reason. You need to slow down Ohio State's offense early in the first quarter. You cannot let them get rolling early, because as soon as this offense starts cooking with some oil, they end up causing a grease fire that's hard to put out. Notre Dame has to set the tone early within the first 5-6 minutes of this game. They probably need to score in their opening possession. It doesn't have to be a touchdown, but you at least got to put some points on the board within the first couple of minutes in this ball game to let Ohio State know that y'all not just about to push us around like we're anybody. We're the Notre Dame Fighting Irish. We're the Catholics. And one thing that I love about Notre Dame in this game that is going to be a huge advantage for them is their secondary. Their secondary matches up incredibly well with the wide receiving core of Ohio State. Notre Dame has the best secondary in college football. They have a lot of length, a lot of size, and athleticism. They don't have a single starting defensive back that's anything shorter than 6 feet tall, and they weigh at least 185 pounds or 180 pounds. So with the advantage that they have in the secondary, you might not have to take a book out of Texas game plan and bracket Jeremiah Smith or double team him. You might actually have an outside corner who can somewhat keep him at bay. Now, are you going to be able to completely shut down Jeremiah Smith? I don't know. I'm not going to go that far, because Jeremiah Smith, this dude is a superhuman. He's an alien. I refuse to believe that this kid is only 19 years old. Let's just be honest about Jeremiah Smith. This is a grown man in a young man's body. This pretty much is a NFL wide receiver playing in college football. But if Notre Dame can't defend Jeremiah Smith one-on-one, then I'm pretty confident that if they double team him, they can somewhat eliminate the impact that he has on this game, force them to go to Emeka Egbuka, Cornell Tate. But the Notre Dame secondary is a big strength of this defense. Now, the biggest weakness for Notre Dame defensively is their front seven. Their defensive line has a few guys that are under 300 pounds. You already lost one of your best interior defensive linemen. So I wonder how they're going to hold up against Ohio State's ground game. Ohio State, with the two great running backs they have, and Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins, I think they're going to pose a major problem for Notre Dame defense that gave up 204 rushing yards against Penn State in their previous playoff matchup. So for Notre Dame, you're going to have to find a way to force Ohio State to have to beat you playing to your strength defensively, which is your secondary. If you can make Ohio State become a team that just wants to try to throw it all over the field against you, which Ohio State probably could have that game plan. They might come out and feel like, since they're the more talented team, they can throw it at will against Notre Dame, because Ohio State, they want to get this game wrapped up early. Because if they don't, and this is a one-possession game going into the fourth quarter, Ohio State fans should be very worried. Because one thing about Notre Dame is that this is a team that is a lot similar to what Michigan is. All right, their quarterback play is better. Riley Leonard, we know he's a capable quarterback, but he doesn't light the world on fire from a stat sheet standpoint, but he's a really tough quarterback. He's a good runner. He knows how to run guys over. He's like a fullback at quarterback pretty much, and he does have the ability to make a few big throws here and there. Ohio State, you don't want this being a close game going into the final 15 minutes, because Notre Dame is one of those teams that they just find ways to win, and they love to get in street fights. They love to get in the ugly games. They would love for this to be a 10-13 game, a 17-14 game with 15 minutes left, because that means that they survived the onslaught. They survived the storm. And once you get into those last 15 minutes, anything can happen from that point on, because Notre Dame, what makes them such a great team is that their identity is that we just find ways to win, which is playing good football on all three phases: defense, offense, and dominating on special teams. Their field goal kicking has been immaculate. They've had a big kickoff return to start the second half of that win against Georgia. They just are so well coached in all three phases of the game, which is why you don't want this game to become one where you have to beat them with what you do in the last couple of minutes, because with their identity, with their DNA, they're just one of those gritty football teams that once it becomes a close game, you're playing their game. Ohio State needs to make Notre Dame uncomfortable. You need to get the Fighting Irish playing from behind. I know what you Notre Dame fans are about to say about that. Well, JT, we've played from behind before. You don't want to play from behind against Ohio State. If Ohio State goes into halftime up 24-3, the ball game is over. You're not a team that's built to overcome a deficit of that magnitude. Now, if it's a 10-point deficit that you got to come back from, then that's manageable. But you don't want to get into a game where you can't run the football because you have not a lot of time left to get back into the game. And Riley Leonard, he needs to play the best game of his career. He needs to play this game like this could be the last time he ever touches a football, because Ohio State's cornerbacks are not that good in my opinion. So there are opportunities to get some big plays downfield. Ohio State's corners, they can be a little bit handsy at times, a little bit overzealous in coverage. And Notre Dame, like we saw last week against Penn State, with how creative their offensive coordinator is at getting guys open, there's a few opportunities for Riley Leonard to get those big shots downfield if he's able to hit them with accuracy. He doesn't overthrow anybody. But you need Riley Leonard to play a flawless game. Another thing that Notre Dame has to do and what Ohio State has to look out for is Jeremiah Love, their fantastic running back. Notre Dame has to find ways to just get him the ball. It doesn't mean just handing him the football 30 times. You got to get creative with it. Notre Dame, they got to find a way to get Jeremiah Love in open space, rather it be jet sweep, screen passes, flanking him out right with the hopes of getting him matched up against a linebacker. You got to get the ball to your best playmaker on offense. If you can get the ball in Jeremiah Love's hands, a lot of good things are going to happen. For as good as what Ohio State's defense is, I don't think they got anybody on that defense that wants to see Jeremiah Love one-on-one in the open field. So, Ohio State, with them having the obvious talent advantage in this game, you expect them to put this game on ice early. By the time we get to the third quarter, you expect Ohio State to be up by at least 3 possessions. But if the game ends up being a one-possession ball game with 15 minutes to go, I like Notre Dame to win it because they've been able to win these style of games all season long. And if Ohio State can't finish this team off before then, that would be a huge indicator how this game is going to go. Because if you're the more talented team and you invested $20 million into this year's squad, this should not even be a competitive game. So if it even gets to that point, I would be really concerned, and I'll be sweating bullets if I'm Ryan Day, Chip Kelly, and Jim Knowles, because that means that Marcus Freeman had this team ready to play. They had a fantastic game plan. They came out with a high level of intensity and urgency. As I said, Notre Dame needs to start this game out with, and they were taking it to you. One thing about Notre Dame is that this is a physical football team, which is why I said that they are a lot similar to Michigan. You know, they stay true to who they are, which is they're going to pound the rock. Even if it isn't working at times, they're still going to stay committed with it, and they're going to try to beat you up front. And they do have a good amount of depth on the offensive line and defensive line. I mean, last game they lost their left tackle. The backup came in, and he was playing pretty well, and Penn State has a pretty good defensive line. Now, of course, their defensive line is nothing compared to y'all's. Okay, Ohio State's defensive line is so good that Texas was scared to run the football up the middle against them from the 1 yard line. So that shows you the respect that not just Texas, but a lot of other teams have for what Ohio State has on the line of scrimmage. But Notre Dame, unlike Texas, they're not going to try to win this game the finesse way. They're not going to be soft. If they win this game, they're going to take it to you. They're going to bring the fight to you. And I think that Notre Dame probably loses this game. 24-17 is going to be my final score prediction. I like Notre Dame to cover that plus 7.5 though. Because, even though they'll lose by a touchdown, the 7.5 technically is 8 points. Notre Dame, with how well coached they are by Marcus Freeman, how they played all year long, defending the pass, I really feel this is going to be a closer game than what a lot of us are expecting. I'm not expecting to see Georgia versus TCU part 2 because Notre Dame is a way better team than what that TCU squad was. And you got to remember, Notre Dame earned the right to be here. It's not like they got lucky against one team and they lucked up getting into this game. They beat Indiana, who was a top 10 team, Georgia, who was a top 5 team, and Penn State, who was a top 5, top 10 team. So if you can beat 3 ultra-talented squads, I'm pretty confident that you can keep it close with Ohio State. Hell, that Texas game that Ohio State played in this past week wasn't expected to be that close. And yet, they didn't really pull away until the last 6 minutes in the fourth quarter when Texas just completely imploded on themselves. So I like Ohio State to win, but I do like Notre Dame to cover. And I do expect for Notre Dame to make this a really competitive game. I'm not expecting this to be a wash where by the time we get into halftime, we're turning the game off and we're watching something else because the outcome is already decided. Shout out to everybody that's tuned in, wherever you're watching, YouTube, X, Facebook. Make sure that you leave a like, subscribe, hit that bell icon if you're new. If you're listening on podcasting platforms, make sure that you share this episode and you give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. Shout out to Sean Chirac. He says, hey, JT, can we get you on the Buckeyes Boys podcast? We would love to have you on the show. Absolutely, man. Just give me a DM on Instagram or X and I'll get back to y'all after I get done live. Or after I get done with this live stream. Deion Sanders has Colorado fans sweating right now because the Dallas Cowboys head coaching job just opened up. And Jerry Jones, their owner, gave Deion Sanders a phone call trying to gauge his interest in potentially taking the job. It seems like he could end up interviewing for this vacancy. And it's strange how Deion Sanders said that he planned on staying in Boulder for a very long time. And he kind of said the same thing at Jackson State, and he ended up leaving Jackson State for Boulder. And he might pull the same stunt with Colorado, dipping for the NFL, despite saying so many times he had no interest coaching grown men. He was put on this earth to help coach young adults, help them to mature into productive young men. But with Deion Sanders, you kind of got to feel like there is a little bit of truth to some of these rumors because you know what they say, when there's smoke, there's fire. And one thing about these coaches is that they're never going to be upfront and truthful about what their intentions are. And Deion hasn't inked a new contract extension with Colorado as well. And one thing about Deion, in the past, he's used these jobs and these opportunities as a stepping stone to something bigger. And if the Dallas Cowboys offer him this head coaching job, then they do promise him that they're going to draft Shedeur Sanders and Shiloh. I think he's going to be the first thing smoking up on out of there from Boulder. He's going to take Pat Shurmur along with them. There's no loyalty in this sport. And that's what you Colorado fans have to understand. I said a few months ago, and a lot of y'all came at me sideways when I said that Deion Sanders is not going to be in Colorado for long. You got to remember what this program was before he arrived there. Irrelevant. Nobody was paying attention to Colorado football. They're one of the worst programs in all of college football. All of a sudden, Deion Sanders arrives with his Louis luggage, He overhauls that program, and within the span of 2 years, he leads them to a 9-win season, an Alamo Bowl appearance, and they came really close to making it to the Big 12 title game and possibly appearing in a college football playoff. So Deion Sanders has shown that at worst, he's a solid head coach. Now, how does his coaching translate to the NFL level? I really don't know, but with Deion Sanders, he's one of those guys that I'm never going to count him out. He knows what it takes to succeed. He puts in a lot of work. This is somebody who has a gold jacket for a reason. You don't get in the Hall of Fame by not being a hard worker at your craft. Whatever Deion Sanders puts his mind to, he always finds a way to succeed because he's one of those dudes that's just all in. But is he all in with Colorado football? Because in spite of him getting Julian Lewis and a lot of good pickups out of the transfer portal, you know, if the Dallas Cowboys come calling and they promise him the ability to coach with his sons, he's definitely going to take that job because Deion Sanders is somebody that loves to be in the spotlight. He loves the limelight. He loves the attention. But the good thing is, if you're a Buffs fan, is that the chances of this happening on a 1 through 10 scale, I give it a 4 out of 10. There are a lot of pieces that have to fall perfectly in place for Deion to take this job. First of all, the Cowboys got to find a way to position themselves to draft Shedeur Sanders. Now, even though Shedeur could say, don't draft me, I want to play with my dad, you're going to have to find a way to get rid of Dak Prescott. And that's going to be difficult in itself because you just gave him extension before last season started. So you're on the books for his salary, and you're going to have to find a team that's willing to take that contract, that's willing to trade for Dak Prescott. And plus, I believe Dak Prescott has a no trade clause in his contract. So wherever you want to trade him to, he has to sign off on that destination. And another reason why I have a low amount of confidence in Deion leaving Colorado for the Cowboys job is that Deion and Jerry Jones are egomaniacs. They have two of the biggest egos in all the sports. Jerry Jones wants all the credit when the Cowboys win. Deion Sanders wants the spotlight. He wants the attention. He kind of is a little bit self-centered to some capacity. And when you have two guys that have such big egos, it's hard for them to coexist. Plus, I have a hard time envisioning Deion Sanders being okay with being Jerry Jones' puppet because Jerry Jones, not only is he the owner, but he also is in charge of assembling the team, making the personnel decisions. I could see him and Deion clashing heads a lot on a lot of things, similar to how Jimmy Johnson and Jerry Jones used to clash heads. So I think that Deion is happy in Boulder. I more so think that he's trying to milk this as more leverage to get everything that he wants in terms of his contract demands, probably the salary, probably some little bit more added incentive, some more guarantees to help with the NIL collective to get more good players out of the portal and out of high school. So this could be a power move by Deion just to try to leverage this in contract negotiations. He probably is saying to Rick George, hey, man, if you want me to stay here, you got to meet my demands. You got to find a way to cave or else I got opportunities lined up for me elsewhere. But maybe Deion really does want to coach in the NFL, and if he gets the opportunity to coach his sons, I don't see how you could get mad at him for that. And, you know, nepotism is a big thing in sports. We just saw the Lakers draft Bronny James. Nobody even thought of touching him in respect for LeBron. So if Shedeur Sanders wants to play with his pops, I believe that teams are going to give him that right to do so. Deion, it's not like he's just some random. He is part of NFL royalty. He is a NFL Hall of Famer. So teams are going to give him that respect. So me personally, I don't think that you Colorado fans should be sweating this too much. There's just too many moving pieces that have to perfectly align for Deion to take this job. And I really do think that he loves Boulder, at least for the moment. We'll see how that holds up within the next couple of years or so. But I just can't see him coaching in the NFL. I think that his coaching style is better suited for the collegiate level than it is the NFL level. Alabama had a really disappointing season in Kalen DeBoer's first year as the head coach of the Crimson Tide. I expected Alabama to win anything between 10 to 12 games under Kalen DeBoer. But of course, that didn't happen. Jalen Milroe, I felt like he had a large reason for, run that back. I ain't like how we led into that one. Kalen DeBoer's first season at Alabama was a huge disappointment in my opinion. Coming into this year, I felt that Alabama had enough talent that they carried over from Nick Saban to at least win 10 games, and the season didn't go anywhere as I expected it to, and it was a major disappointment. Now, I put Kalen DeBoer's disappointing first season in Tuscaloosa mainly on the shoulders of Jalen Milroe, because let's just be honest about him. He was not good. Anytime you have a quarterback that has more rushing touchdowns than he does passing, it shows you everything that you need to know about him. If you take away his legs and you force him to throw the ball, you're going to have somebody that just is an incompetent quarterback. And with Alabama having Ty Simpson, Austin Mack, and true freshman phenom Keelan Russell coming in, I easily expect for Alabama's offense to be more productive this upcoming season, now that you're going to have better quarterbacks that are more equipped to have success in this Kalen DeBoer system. And despite having a letdown of a first season, Kalen DeBoer was 4-1 against ranked teams. They still beat Georgia, LSU, South Carolina, Missouri, and their rival Auburn. The only good team they lost to was Tennessee. The problem with Kalen DeBoer is that this team didn't show up against inferior competition. They had a tendency to play down to the level of competition that they were going up against. You know, I get that Diego Pavia and Vandy had a really good season for Vanderbilt standards, but there are just certain teams that a school like Alabama should just never lose to, and Vanderbilt is one of those. Losing on the road to a really bad Oklahoma team in blowout fashion was really embarrassing. So the problem with Kalen DeBoer in year one is that Alabama fell victim to what Nick Saban loves to call the rat poison. They heard all these good things about them, all the good teams they were beating. Everybody was saying nothing but positive things about them, was boosting their heads up. And then when they got into these games against low-hanging fruit, that's when they got in trouble. And now with Kalen DeBoer entering his second season, I believe that he's going to make the necessary changes needed to get Alabama football heading in the right direction. You know, there is a lot of pressure that comes with replacing a head coach that has the pristine and the reputation that Nick Saban has, being widely considered as the greatest head coach in college football history. So there's a lot of pressure that comes with replacing somebody like that. And Kalen DeBoer had huge shoes to fill. And I still feel like the future of Alabama football under Kalen DeBoer is still really optimistic in a lot of people's eyes. I don't see a lot of people saying that they don't believe in Kalen DeBoer. And to me, with everywhere that Kalen DeBoer has been at, him being able to win multiple national championships at the NAIA level, winning at Washington, Alabama's future is in safe hands with him as the head coach. I really believe that. I still believe that he has a claim to being arguably the best head coach in college football, because I want to tell you Alabama fans this. Remember, if you zoom out on what Kalen DeBoer has done this last year, at Washington, he beat Dan Lanning twice. He beat Steve Sarkisian in the semifinals. This past season, he beat Kirby Smart. He beat Brian Kelly. He has beaten some of the best coaches in college football. The problem is that Alabama just played down to the worst teams on their schedule. So if you can go 4-1 against ranked competition, I don't really see any reason why anybody should be pessimistic about Alabama's outlook under DeBoer moving forward. And he already has kind of proved a lot of people wrong in terms of what was the biggest concern people had about him when he initially took this job in the first place was how well was he going to be able to recruit? Because you got somebody who comes from the West Coast, doesn't really have a lot of ties to the South. Was he going to be able to sustain the elite level of recruiting that Alabama was able to have under Nick Saban? And he did that with flying colors, because Alabama is coming into this year with a top 5 class, and they still have one of the better rosters in college football. They didn't lose too many starters in the transfer portal. So going into the 2025 college football season, Alabama is going to be in the conversation to win it all. I thought that they would have been a lot better than what they were this past season, but in year 2, that's really when you're going to see just how truly good of a coach Kalen DeBoer is. I mean, just zoom out and look at what he did against the best teams on the schedule for Alabama in 2024. Alabama got it done. He was able to somewhat elevate Jalen Milroe in those games. Now that Jalen Milroe is gone and you got rid of the baggage, because that's what Jalen Milroe was. He was baggage, man. He was just holding this team down. Now with you having quarterbacks that can more accurately throw the football, I expect for Alabama's offense to skyrocket in its production, and I expect Alabama overall as a team to look way better in 2025 than what they did last season. They should be competing for the SEC title, and they should be in a championship conversation when it comes playoff time. Dabo Swinney isn't messing around anymore, people. Dabo is making aggressive changes at Clemson. He's using the transfer portal with God's name, image, and likeness money. You got him poaching Tom Allen from Penn State to become his new defensive coordinator. Dabo Swinney is doing what a lot of people thought he was unwilling to do, and that's adapt. And that should scare all of college football. Because remember what Clemson used to be a few years ago. Not too long ago, Clemson was widely considered to be the next dynasty in college football. When you went from Todd Boyd to Deshaun Watson, you won your first ever national championship. Then you go from Deshaun to Trevor Lawrence, you won your second ever national championship. Clemson was on a really fast trajectory to being one of the most dominant programs in this sport. And then all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence leaves and they kind of plummet back down to reality. And it seemed like the game was passing Dabo Swinney by. His stubbornness was getting the best of him and was holding this program back. Well, no longer. I mean, Tom Allen, to be able to steal him from Penn State is an incredible hire by Dabo Swinney, because now he has two of the best coordinators in college football. Remember, he has Garrett Riley as his offensive coordinator, who he poached from TCU. And if that last name sounds familiar to you, yes, Garrett Riley is related to Lincoln Riley, the current head coach at USC. This is his younger brother. Garrett Riley was the OC for TCU the year they lost to Georgia in the national championship. He was the Jim Bortles Award winner that season as well, which is awarded to the best assistant in college football. So the fact that Dabo Swinney now has two of the best coordinators in the game, you are positioning yourself this season to make a run once again at a national championship. Because what Tom Allen is going to do to Clemson's defense is going to be really, really jaw-dropping. Because at Penn State last season, that was a top 5 defense. They were 5th in yards per game allowed. They were 6th against the pass, and they were 8th against the run. And Tom Allen's going to be replacing former defensive coordinator Wes Goodwin, who Dabo Swinney parted ways with after 3 years with the program. And a large reason why he decided to make a change at defensive coordinator is because Texas was just obliterating Clemson on the ground in the run game. And if Clemson is ever going to get back to competing for a national championship, you got to have a really good staff. And that's what Dabo Swinney now has with the hiring of Tom Allen. And you pair him up with Garrett Riley as the offensive coordinator. This is one of the best staffs in America. And you look at what Clemson has done in the transfer portal. Do they have a really loaded portal class? No, but the fact that Dabo Swinney now is just willing to use the portal is growth in itself. Clemson already has a really good team coming into this year. When they made it to the playoffs last season, they did it with a roster that was majority comprised of underclassmen. Now you're going to have a lot of those underclassmen who are going to become upperclassmen that are going to enter their junior seasons or their second seasons with the program with more experience. They're only going to get better. I mean, the sky is really looking, or not the sky, but things are really trending up for Clemson football again. And the fact that Dabo Swinney is getting aggressive at making the necessary changes needed to make Clemson a national championship contender once again is showing you that he just has that itch to make it back to the top again. He's tired of being second fiddle. He's tired of people counting him out. He's tired of being disrespected because there's a good amount of people that don't even consider Dabo Swinney to be a top 5 head coach anymore. And when you think about, how people were coming at him when he used to have the weekly call-in show on the radio, you could really tell what's getting to him. And he tried to do things his way. He tried to do things the morally ethical way. And now he's just got to a point when he just says enough's enough. I'm fed up. I'm about to do what everybody else is doing. And that's a sign that you have a great head coach. And Dabo Swinney, even if he didn't take this aggressive approach this offseason, using the transfer portal, making the necessary changes that he needed to make on the coaching staff, he already proved everybody wrong because nobody thought Clemson would ever get back to the playoffs again with the refusal to dive in the portal. Well, Dabo did that. So it kind of was a middle finger to everybody, and now he's using what everybody else is using to increase their chances to win it all. So I expect Clemson to be competing for a national title this year. I'll be really shocked if we don't at least see Clemson making it to the second or the third round of the CFP in 2025. They have a really great team coming into this upcoming season. You got Cade Klubnik, to me, looks like a top 3 contender to win the Heisman Trophy. Did you see the way Cade Klubnik was throwing that rock against Texas? I mean, he was throwing that pill with some precision. He was making a lot of tight window throws. I was really impressed with the way that Cade Klubnik played against Clemson. I don't know about you, but Cade Klubnik won me over in that game. I was somebody that never was a huge fan of his. I thought that he was always heavily overrated, but that game against Texas completely made me flip my opinion on how I view Cade Klubnik. And now with him entering his 3rd season in Garrett Riley's system, having a good group of receivers now, the offensive line improving, and Dabo Swinney assembling one of the best staffs in America, y'all better stop sleeping on Clemson. Not enough people are talking about Clemson when it comes to the national championship conversation for next season. Before we move on, make sure that you smash that like button, you subscribe to the channel, hit that bell icon if you're new so you don't miss when we drop new content and when we go live. Remember as well, we are not just a YouTube channel, we are a podcast. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, Amazon, wherever you get your podcast from. The JT Sports Podcast is available. Give us a 5-star review if you enjoy. The links are down in the description. Shout out to my guy, Sean Struck. He says, sorry, Notre Dame won't be able to score. Notre Dame hasn't played a team like OSU. I mean, when Ohio State played Penn State, they only won that game by 1 possession. And Notre Dame beat Penn State. Notre Dame beat Georgia. Notre Dame, I don't think that it's fair to Notre Dame to say that they don't have a chance in this game, because they definitely do. Like with what they have done these last couple of weeks and the teams that they've beaten, they've more than shown that they're capable to hang around with Ohio State. Ohio State definitely could blow them out. I'm not saying that we couldn't see a blowout, but I just think they're well too coached, and they do have a really good secondary that does match up well with Ohio State's wide receiving core. So time will tell, but Notre Dame, they got enough to be able to hang around in this game. On paper, when you look at Notre Dame going into that Georgia game, did you expect them to be able to score points against them? Did you expect them to crack 27 points against Penn State, who had a top 5 defense? Shout out to Joe Long. He says Notre Dame played Ohio State last 2 years and lost both by a touchdown. Yeah, so it's like, I feel like Notre Dame can make this a competitive game. If Notre Dame gets blown out, then it wouldn't surprise me a lot, but it still would kind of surprise me. But just with how well they've looked throughout the playoffs against the better competition that they played. My guy Panama Jack says, stop sleeping on FSU. 2-10 to 10-2. JT is coming on the Gus bus, and Thomas Castellanos is a dark horse Heisman contender. I mean, I'm not sleeping on FSU. I mean, I wasn't sleeping on y'all last year. I thought y'all at least would be a 9-1 team in spite of how bad DJU was, but I wasn't expecting y'all to be the worst team in college football damn near, but I'm not expecting y'all to go to 10-2 neither. I don't see y'all having more wins than North Carolina with Bill Belichick, and I don't see y'all being better than Clemson. I think y'all go from 2-10 to around 8-9 wins, and there is a strong possibility that you could be better than Miami. But I'm not really sleeping on FSU. I haven't really talked about Florida State that much ever since I covered their hiring of Gus Malzahn. Joe Long says, including last year, Notre Dame led for 59 minutes and lined up 10 guys on D for the last 2 plays. Growing pains. I think we're going to get a really good game in the national championship. That's what I'm expecting. I'm not expecting for this to be Georgia versus TCU part 2. I would be really shocked if that was to happen. Not like incredibly shocked, but a little bit shocked. You know, out of my 1 through 10 shock scale, if Notre Dame got blown out, I'll go with a 5 out of 10. Because there is a chance that it could happen. But, you know, Notre Dame, with the way that Michigan was able to beat them, or the way that Michigan was able to beat Ohio State, they somewhat have the blueprint to being able to hang around with Ohio State and possibly pull off this upset. And it is college football. Everybody should know that you can't completely judge these teams and the outcome of these games off paper, because the games get played for a reason. And with how chaotic this season has been, I think you'll be incredibly delusional to make it seem like Notre Dame has no shot at all. Because who would have thought that Oklahoma would have beaten Georgia or would have beaten Alabama? Who would have thought that Ole Miss would have lost to the worst team in the SEC that year, this being Kentucky? You know, like, with how chaotic this season has been, I wouldn't rule out an upset, but I definitely think that it's more than plausible to see Notre Dame being able to make this a ball game with Ohio State. Let's move on. How do I want to lead off with this? Okay. Oklahoma landed John Mateer in the transfer portal. For those of y'all who don't know who John Mateer is, he was the second best player in the portal, only second to Carson Beck, who transferred from Georgia to Miami. And John Mateer, how you think I should lead off with this? All right. Y'all better watch out for Oklahoma this season. Oklahoma is a really dangerous team coming into 2025. I know they had a really disappointing first season in the SEC, but year 2 in the SEC, they're going to shock a lot of people this year because they got a new quarterback that they got out of the transfer portal from Washington State named John Mateer. I'm going to be honest, I'm really jealous that Oklahoma got him over my Miami Hurricanes because I really wanted Miami to get this dude. John Mateer is an absolute stud. Not only did he account for 44 touchdowns last season at Washington State playing with nobodies, but he plays a lot like Bo Nix. Really athletic, has a really strong arm, really accurate, throwing the football downfield, working the quick passing game. And he follows his offensive coordinator, Ben Arbuckle, from Wazoo to Norman. And John Mateer has the capability to have the same impact for the Sooners that Ken Ward had for the Hurricanes last season, because he's one of those players that just can elevate the entire team and he can elevate a program. And going into this season already, John Mateer, to me, is the best quarterback in the SEC at the moment, at least proven quarterback. We don't know how good Arch Manning is going to be, and I'll take John Mateer over Lenore Sellers and DJ Lagway and Garrett Nussmeier. And I expect John Mateer to be a Heisman finalist, and for him to have Oklahoma competing for a spot in the SEC championship and possibly being a playoff team, because you guys got to remember this. The biggest problem with Oklahoma last season was the offense. They had a bunch of injuries. As soon as they got out of fall camp, they were down like 2 or 3 of their top receivers. They had injuries on the offensive line. The play calling wasn't good, but the defense played outstanding. The defense played at a championship level. And we know that Brent Venables is going to have that side of the football playing at an elite level. Now you just have to get the offense right. And by bringing in John Mateer, Oklahoma has already improved their win total by +3 wins. They should easily be no worse than a 9-win team this season with how good John Mateer is. This is a quarterback that has the capability of being able to be a potential first-round pick in the NFL draft. If you look at what John Mateer was able to do at Washington State despite not having a lot of great talent around him, and you think about what he's going to do with Deion Burks coming back and him having a better supporting cast around him, plus him once again being in the same system that he already is familiar with that led him to have so much success his first year as the starter at Wazoo, I'm quickly expecting for Oklahoma to have one of the biggest turnarounds in college football in 2025. I still believe in Brent Venables. I'm not selling any of my Brent Venables stocks. With the way that college football is, you're going to have a down season every once in a while. Oklahoma has such a strong NIL backing, and when you think about the history of this program, it's really unlikely that we see the Sooners have another season like they had in 2024 again. John Mateer changes everything for the Sooners this year. You're getting somebody who is a great playmaker. He's really good at making things happen when the protection breaks down. You didn't really have an elite athlete in Jackson Arnold. I felt like Jackson Arnold was an okay athlete, but he wasn't really that creative at being able to buy time for receivers to get open. He wasn't the same kind of quarterback that John Mateer is in terms of making guys miss in the open field with his agility and his wiggle. John Mateer, I really wish Miami would have landed him because he's going to do a fantastic job with Oklahoma this year. This is a dangerous team this season. Their potential with John Mateer possibly could be winning the SEC this season because the SEC is wide open. You can't look at the SEC anymore and say that, yeah, this team is a lock to win it, because the gap between the best teams, the middle of the pack teams, and the worst teams in the SEC is not that wide anymore thanks to the NIL and the transfer portal. So Oklahoma has just as good as a shot with John Mateer at quarterback at winning the SEC this season as what Alabama, Texas, Georgia, and what any of the other schools who are favored to finish in the top half of this conference do. Oklahoma is a really dangerous team this year with the addition of John Mateer out of the transfer portal. This is going to be one of the most impactful, if not the most impactful transfer portal pickup out of any team in college football when the 2025 season concludes. John Mateer is a really good quarterback. A lot of people don't know about how good this guy is from a national level, but you quickly are about to find out because he's going to set the SEC world on fire, and he's going to have Oklahoma being talked about the same way Cam Ward had Miami being talked about. The only difference is you hope that Oklahoma doesn't end up fizzling out the same way the Hurricanes did, but Brent Venables is a better coach than what Mario Cristobal is, just in my opinion. So I'm really confident that John Mateer is going to make Oklahoma the most dangerous team in the Southeastern Conference this year. This is a team that nobody really is talking about for being a playoff team. They're not even ranked in most of the way too early top 25 polls, which is really unusual because normally Oklahoma is always rated as a top 25 team heading into the season. So John Mateer has the capability to shock everybody with how good he's going to make Oklahoma this upcoming season. Oregon has been called out by former Boise State offensive coordinator Dirk Cutter, who recently retired, for their unethical practices of how they use the transfer portal. Now, Oregon has been one of those teams that likes to tamper. They like to call guys, try to gauge their interest before they hit the portal, where they still are playing for somebody else, and they try to persuade them to leave their current program, to join them. They promised them a bigger payday, and they just stole one of USC's best offensive linemen. And the Boise State offensive coordinator also said that they were trying to get a bunch of guys off that Boise State team to come transfer as well. And the NCAA isn't doing a doggone thing about it. They're just allowing Oregon to pretty much poach and steal everybody's players with no punishments, no guarantees, and with all of the unlimited NIL money that Dan Lanning and that program are receiving from Phil Knight. I can't really say I blame them. Look, don't hate the player, hate the game. You can't get mad at Oregon for doing what the NCAA is allowing. Once again, this doesn't fall on Oregon because they're taking advantage of a loophole that everybody else is taking advantage of. Everybody's just mad at Oregon because, you know, they have the ability to do it at a way higher level than what everybody else does. Because if you got unlimited NIL money, why wouldn't you try to entice the best players of some of the best teams in the Big Ten or the SEC to come play it for you? It's like, yeah, you're starting here, you're getting paid good, but we can offer you times to what you're already making starting at your current school. If you were in these players' shoes and Oregon hit your phone, Dan Lanning was on the line and saying, hey, bro, like, listen, you're a great receiver, but we can give you times for what you're making right now if you come play for us, and you got the possibility of competing for a national championship with all the talent that we already have. I mean, how could you pass up the offer? Like, these coaches that keep calling out Oregon for tampering and poaching their players, they need to be taking this up with the NCAA because this isn't Oregon's fault. They're just doing what anybody else would do if you were in their position. Now, of course, it is unethical. I'm not saying that it's right or it's justified. You feel me? But I'm just saying that this has been allowed to happen. And I go back to when everybody wanted these players to get paid. Everybody wanted these players to have the right to transfer and instantly play whenever they wanted to. How did nobody ever see this happening? You know, when you have a team that just has so many resources and they have so much money to spend, they're not just going to be satisfied with the guys that are available in the portal when they can go and get better. Oregon pretty much has an NIL backing that can allow them to assemble just an overall stacked roster where they have literally the best player at every position, rather it be on the offensive line, the defensive line, cornerback. Like, I can't believe Oregon went out the way they did this past season. I was stunned at how they just got annihilated and taken off the map in the Rose Bowl by the Buckeyes. I strongly think that after the way that game went, Dan Lanning and his staff were even more aggressive at trying to poach players off other rosters because you need to have the most stacked team possible if you want to take down a school like Ohio State that's investing $20 million into their team. You know, at the end of the day, it seems like college football is turning into pay to win more than what the NFL is. It kind of has transcended what the NFL is because the NFL has a salary cap. And more so it's like the MLB, Major League Baseball, because they don't have a salary cap. As long as you have the money to pay everybody that you're getting, you can have an entire MLB team with the best pitchers, the best hitters, as long as you can afford to pay them all. And that's what Oregon's doing. So I'm not mad at Oregon for what they're doing. Hell, if I had that Phil Knight NIL money, I'll be using that thing too to buy up anybody. I'll be buying up Arch Manning off Texas. I'll be like, Arch, they're paying you $5 million. I'll give you $10 million if you come play for me. You know, if I'm Oregon, I'm trying to steal everybody. You can't get mad at them, especially if you're coaching at a smaller school like Boise State. You already know what it is. You know that you don't have a lot of NIL money to keep those guys around. You can't get mad at the players for following the money. Money makes the world go around. I understand the frustrations, though, if you're a G5 head coach, because it's hard to sustain a certain level of success at that level when you're able to get these 2 and 3 star guys, develop them, build them up into really productive players, all for them to be developed for somebody else once they peak, and then they end up benefiting another program. Where if they stayed, maybe a team like Boise State or another G5 team that has a lot of talent that can't keep it because other schools like Oregon keep using these unethical practices of stealing them off these G5 schools, we could have an actual Cinderella team in the college football playoffs. You see what Oregon is doing right now with them abusing the portal rules, them tampering and not suffering any repercussions because of it, is why we will never see a Cinderella run in the CFP. It will never happen, because anytime you have any high-level players on a smaller school, Oregon's going to come and buy them up. And I'm not just trying to single out Oregon, because there are a lot of teams that are doing it, but Oregon is just more so in the headlines because I just see tons of coaches talking about what they're doing. You know, every day I wake up, it's a new article about Oregon's unethical transfer portal practices. But at this point, I can't even call it unethical. I say what the NCAA is doing is unethical, with the fact that they refuse to do anything about it. Hate the game, don't hate the player. I will never get mad at a coach for doing everything that he can to put the best team on the field, because that's what it's all about at the end of the day. And if you're able to get away with stealing players and it's not against the rules, the NCAA doesn't care, then I say just keep on doing it. You know, the NCAA needs to handle this. That's why Nick Saban needs to be commissioner. That's why the NCAA needs to be a little bit more competent at actually doing their job. You know, if you're an Oregon fan, I don't think you should be feeling any guilt about what you're doing. I see y'all going to war for your program, defending them on X and Instagram. You shouldn't get too riled up about it. People are going to hate on you for doing what it takes to win. But at the end of the day, it's like, who cares, man? All that matters is winning that national championship. Texas is buying players. Ohio State is buying players. Like, you're not the only team that's doing this. You're just being talked about doing it as much because you have so much money. You feel me? If I had somebody that was giving me unlimited NIL money, I'm calling every good player off every team. I'm buying Jeremiah Smith off Ohio State. How much you getting, Jeremiah? They giving you $7 million? I'll double that. I'll give you $14 million. I'm getting the best pass rushers, the best offensive tackles. I'm building me a dream team if I'm Dan Lanning. Like, I love what Dan Lanning is doing, man. I love Dan Lanning because he has a ruthless, cold-blooded mentality. We finna, like, do you imagine how cold you gotta be to take one of USC's best players, somebody that you play with in conference, just say, you know, like, yeah, we're in the same conference as what you are, but it's like, bro, we're offering you more money if you come play and start for us. That's cold. I mean, you can't hate him for doing it, man. If it's allowed to happen and nobody wants to do anything about it, then keep on doing it. At the end of the day, his goal is to put the best team on the field. And if that means that you got to go steal from other teams to do it, so be it. Don't really make a big difference to me. The last thing I want to talk about before we get up on out of here, Florida fans, please do not take this the wrong way, what I'm about to say. But let's just be honest. Can we just slow down on the DJ Lagway hype? I be seeing y'all everywhere on X, Instagram, talking about DJ Lagway for Heisman. Every time a good receiver enters the transfer portal, y'all one of the first fan bases in the comment section talking about some Comcast passes from DJ Lagway. Like, look, I'm not denying that DJ Lagway had a very good true freshman campaign. Balled out against Ole Miss and LSU, led you to back-to-back wins against ranked teams for the first time in a few years. But I feel like DJ Lagway isn't going to take the massive leap that Gators fans are expecting him to take in 2025. I'm not expecting from DJ Lagway to go from what he was as a true freshman to becoming one of the best quarterbacks in college football. I feel for DJ Lagway, this season coming up, he'll be one of the better quarterbacks in the SEC, but he won't be a Heisman contender, and he won't have Florida competing for a spot in the SEC title or in the college football playoffs. I believe Florida as a whole, along with DJ Lagway, is at least one more year away from being in that conversation where we're talking about Florida being able to win the SEC championship. We're talking about Florida not only being able to be a playoff team, but being able to be a national championship team. I just think for DJ Lagway, for him to take that jump from being what he was as a true freshman to becoming a Heisman contender, he's just at least one more year away. I expect for him to have a really productive season in 2025. But all I'm saying is that most quarterbacks in their second season, they don't immediately become a Heisman finalist. Most of the times it happens during their third season. Now, some of y'all are probably going to use Lenore Sellers at South Carolina as an example, but you got to remember, Lenore Sellers was a redshirt freshman this past season. He sat out the entirety of his true freshman season. So this is going to be his third season. DJ Lagway kind of has the same skill set and the same physique as what Lenore Sellers has. And DJ Lagway last year, as good as what he played at times, he wasn't perfect. His pocket presence still needs a lot of work. He needs to get a little bit more confident at throwing the ball from within the pocket. Sometimes he can be a little bit too quick to bail out of the pocket. He has to get way more accurate. There are times when he struggled to make the easy throws. Guys he was overthrowing when they were just 5 yards downfield. As good as how DJ Lagway played, Florida fans don't talk about some of the struggles that he had as a true freshman. They'll make you believe that this dude was one of the best true freshman quarterbacks in the history of college football. Like, DJ Lagway had a really good true freshman season. But I think we got to temper their expectations just a little bit, a tad, when it comes to DJ Lagway, because what a lot of the fan bases will do is that they will have a lot of hype for a quarterback coming into the season, and then if he doesn't live up to it, although he does have a lot of potential, people will start to turn on him, i.e. Drew Aller. Drew Aller, going into his third season next year, should be balling out in 2025. This year, he showed a lot of improvement compared to what he was, the year prior. But DJ Lagway, with how he looked his true freshman season, he still showed that he has a lot of room to improve, a lot of room to grow. And I really don't expect for him to be in that Heisman conversation, to have Florida competing for a spot in the CFP or the SEC title until he gets into year 3. And year 3 for DJ Lagway is going to be one of the best seasons that Florida is going to have since Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow were down in Gainesville, because you got a lot of other players that, like DJ Lagway, stepped up during their freshman years, because a large reason why Florida was willing to give Billy Napier another year and why they didn't want to can him so early was because a good majority of their NIL money is tied into these underclassmen. And with how well they played under Billy Napier last year, within another year or two, they become juniors, they become upperclassmen. You have a team that is ready to roll, that's ready to get back to that national spotlight. So I'm a believer in DJ Lagway. I'm not saying that he's going to be garbage. I'm trying to be as honest as possible, but not trying to trash him, because I'm not trying to trash him. He's really good. I could see y'all beating Miami this year with DJ Lagway, just being honest. But I'm not going to come out here and just anoint him as the next best thing since sliced bread going into his second season. If I had to give you a prediction on what I think DJ Lagway's stat line is going to be this season, I'll say he probably throws for 2,800 passing yards, 19 touchdowns to 11 interceptions, and he has about 500 rushing yards and 8 touchdowns to go along with that. I think that would be a really good season for DJ Lagway in year 2, and that would be a tremendous leap from where he was last season. And then going into year 3, you end up building him up for a season where then the Heisman hype would be warranted. Then the national championship, the SEC title aspirations will be warranted. But I just think that Florida fans are kind of putting too much stock in the DJ Lagway in 2025 that is now starting to become a little bit unrealistic. You know, I already got homies that are telling me that they're betting a lot of money on DJ Lagway to win Heisman this year. I just think that the expectations need to be tempered a little bit, because if he ends up struggling and then people end up turning on him, we're going to go back to, you know, these offseason overly ambitious expectations that were just too much for him because they were just unrealistic for somebody that's just so early into his career to have. This is it for this episode of the JT Sports Podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in. Shout out to Panama Jack. Shout out to Go Pack, go all day. He says, Go Pack, go. Panama Jack also says Oregon was never built in the trenches, dating back to when Auburn beat them for the Natty. Absolutely, but you better believe that they're going to be built for the trenches this year, man. Oregon's coming for everything. They're coming for a national championship, and they may be coming for your favorite team's best players as well. But before we get up on out of here, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you don't miss when we drop new content. And I will see you guys tomorrow.